Hi, and welcome back to another episode of jPlay. Again, I won't be doing a full play for today. I would rather try to explain this awesome game, Assassinating Emerald by Martin Wallace, which is based on the same short story by Neil Gaiman. Awesome short story. Check out my Facebook page, you will find the link to the short story directly. In this game, I have to admit, I was not so sure. When I first read about this, I'm a Kickstarter backer by the way, I really thought it was awesome. Wow, a game about this awesome short story and with vampires, Sherlock Holmes, Cthulhu and all this nice mixture. Awesome. I think I backed it, then I had a look into the version 1 or version 2 print and play rules. I was confused. I couldn't really imagine without any artwork and such what this game is really or was all about. But I stayed to my pledge, and then I think this game arrived me some weeks ago. I read the final rules that came with this game, and still I thought, okay, what is this all about? I absolutely like the artwork of this one, so really the theme is really one of the best games this year ever I had in my hands. I really love it. But still I couldn't really imagine how the game mechanics actually work, because the rules are relatively complicated when you first read them. When you actually play the game, you get into it really very soon, so maybe after 2 or 3 rounds you really know what you're actually doing. Sometimes this can already be too late, but still this is definitely something you have to learn. But after the game, we were all on the same page basically. We thought this game is awesome, and that's really it. It is complicated, you really have to get into the rules, you have to get into the special conditions for each of these cards, and most of the cards are pretty well explained in this game. There are 1 or 2 spots in the rules, they are not that clear, especially in respect to assassination and when you can do an interrupt with a double agent and such. But this is clarified in the rule or in the forum pretty well directly by Martin Wallace. Thanks for clarifying some of the rules. So again, I have to repeat, this game is awesome, and that's why I try to explain this game to you. I'm not so sure if I will be doing really a very great job, as I cannot foresee or can show you any situation in this game. There are so many special rules for all the cards that are out there and such. So I think you really have to live with some of the core rules. I try to explain the little odd winning conditions in this game. This is also something that's very strange. I have not seen before, to be honest. And some other maybe special cases I try to cover, but I won't explain the vampire or the zombie for you. This is definitely something that will go beyond a normal rule explanation video. Still, I hope it will bring you something, that you learn at least some of the core mechanics of this game. And then, let's see what's in the box and Rache!
Let's have a look at the really awesome main game board of Assassinating Emerald. I think there were discussions on Board Game Geek in respect to how colorful this is, that the colors pop out too much, but forget it. I really like and enjoy the artwork of this Game Boy. I really enjoy the artwork of the overall game here. And really this fits so nicely into this theme. So you see some of these tentacles here of Cthulhu. You see these old-fashioned grayish sepia tone locations, for example here in Paris or down there here in Madrid. It's really nice. Let's have a look at some of the other components of Assassinating Emerald. Let's start with the permanent effect cards. Unlike the normal game cards in this game, these are permanent effects. So once you bid for those and you're able to acquire those cards, you get to get them and put them on display basically for the rest of your game. So you don't have to play them in order to make them actually do something. And in this deck of cards you find cool characters like Sigmund Freud or Dr. Watson or even Cthulhu himself. And then there are the secret identity cards. And these secret identity cards come in 2 flavors. For once they say, hey, you are a loyalist. and the other card says you are a restorationist. And this deck contains the normal game cards. In most cases you will find agent cards in there, but there are also cards for free actions or hired assassin cards, agents that bring you victory points, agent that would allow you to hide or assassinate royalty, and loads of other cool little things to find in this deck. These are the starting conditions for each player. In this case, this would be the blue player, Agent Thursday. This consists of a deck of 10 cards. They're all the same for all the players. Of course, the name is different, but everything else is really the same. Each player starts with one main agent. In this case, this would be Agent Thursday, who would bring a bomb. Then you have some of these influence tokens, and I think these are 15 of these control discs. This pile of token represents the different agents that are in this game. So there is Irene Adler, Vladimir Burtsev, Baron Ungern Sternberg, and many other of them. Of course, in this deck you will also find James Moriarty or Sherlock Holmes. And there's a whole bunch of these double agent tokens, and these double agent tokens represents all the agents that are available in this game, and they allow you to take control of an agent that another player is controlling, and this is really a very interesting twist. And these are 8 cute little zombie meeples which would come into the game by a very specific game card. To be honest, I was not really sure if I liked the idea about zombies in this game, but it turned out that the zombies are really fit very nicely into the theme here. Then there is a whole bunch of these sanity counters, and they come in 2 flavors. For once there are mad counters, I think they're definitely the majority, and there are some sane counters, and these counters more or less give you some way to actually end this game. For example, if any restorationist player would gather his third of this mad counter, then the game will immediately end. Then there are some of these blocking discs, some save counters for the loyalist player in order to hide royalty, the deck of the city cards, so there's 1 card for each city on the game board, and the 2 counters for the revolution track and for the war track, also a great way to finish the game. Okay, let's set up the game board. First of all, each player now takes one of his control discs and puts it here on the victory points track with a value 0. Next, each player takes 6 of these influence cubes from the common reserve, I would call it, and would put it into his available stock here. So these 6 influence cubes are available for the player for the first turns. In a 2 to 3 player game, you would put 3 of these game cards on each of these card slots here. So there's 1 card slot for each city on the game board, and then we will reveal the top card of each of these decks. I've prepared all the card boxes here, so there are 3 cards on each of these card boxes. I revealed the top card of each of these decks, and this is now what's currently available to any player. The rest of the cards, and for a 2 or 3 player game, that's quite a bunch, will be completely removed from the game. Next, each player will draw one of his secret identity cards. So for example, blue would be a restorationist, and the next player would be also a restorationist, and that's actually not really a problem. So in this game, if this would be a 2-player game, both players would fight on the same side, but still there will be only one winner, and this is depending on how many victory points each player has. In a 2-player game, each player starts the game with 4 of these double agent tokens, and of course they are being drawn secretly, so no one does know which double agents you have on your hand, and there are some very interesting already. So for example, Professor Moriarty, we have Louis, Michel, Wilhelm Stieber, Baron Ungern Sternberg. I will explain those double agent tokens later on when I describe you how the actual assassination works. The next thing that you would do is to define a starting player. You define this at random, and then in the player order each player places his main agent into one of these cities. So for example, let's just assume that blue would be the starting player and he would send his main agent, in this case Agent Thursday, to Paris. The second player, for example red, could now do the same. Red could send his agent also to the same city, that's not a problem. Right now they wouldn't struggle at all, but he could also send him to somewhere else because red would say, I don't want to compete with the other player too soon in this case. So for example, red would send his main agent to Zurich. Next thing, each player would shuffle his 10 starting cards and would draw 5 of these at the starting hand, basically, for 5. And this is basically the stock that he has available. It has to be mentioned that you start your turn always with 5 of these cards. So whenever you would be forced to lose a card during your turn because you have to give an agent away or an agent dies, then you would redraw immediately up to 5 cards so that you would start your next turn again with 5 cards. Let's have a look at these game cards. These game cards mainly serve 2 purposes. For once, they hold resources on the top left corner of the card, and some of these cards also provide you with an action. Sometimes that's a one-use action like this one here, so once you use it as an action, this card will be removed from the game. There are also some free actions. Free actions don't count against your action limit of 2, and there are also normal actions, and these normal actions are just being played, then the card would go to the discard pile and then later on will be shuffled back into your hand, just like Dominion. It has to be mentioned that you can use a card either for its resources or for his action. And if you choose the resources, then you have to choose which kind of resource you are going to use this card for. In this case, this is clear. This card brings you 2 bomb symbols, but on this card, for example, you would have to decide if you want to use the resources for the bomb or for the influence cubes. And there's a great variety of cards in this game. Let's take the city card for Berlin in this example. Berlin doesn't have any card text on it, but it brings you a lot of resources. So for once, there is a cube, there is a coin symbol on it, there is a way to progress the war track or to decrease the revolution track. So that's a pretty cool card. And also city cards go into your deck once you acquire them, but this is something I will explain to you in a second. There are 11 standard actions in this game, but of course you are limited to perform 2 actions per turn. So for example, you could place influence cubes, you can claim a card, you can retrieve influence cubes, buy influence cubes, you can move your agents, you can move markers, you can choose to discard cards that really don't fit into your hand, you can reveal your secret identity, but only if you are able to win or end this game with revealing your secret identity. You can reveal a double agent, you can take a card action, or you can just pass. Let's start with the very first option. And this is something that will happen quite often during the game, and this would be to place influence cube. You can place influence cube either in a city, on a game card box, as long as there are still game cards left in this box, and on any revealed permanent effect card that has not been chosen by another player. So for example, you could go for the Society of Leopold here. And then you would have to choose the appropriate game cards from your current hand. So for example, if you wanted to place 3 influence cubes to, let's say, Madrid, then you would take this card here, for example, that shows 2 of these influence cubes here, and you would also take this card here that brings you another influence cube. Remember, you now have to ignore any game text or any other symbols here. So in this case, we really want to use this card only for the influence cubes. This brings us now to 3 influence cubes. Then we take 3 of our available stock influence cubes. We start the game with 6 of those, so let's just take 3 and place it on the Madrid city box here. Note, we really place them on the city box and not on the game card box. That is somehow connected to Madrid, but this is really only a placeholder, you could say. You really have to choose if you will influence Madrid itself or if you want to take control of the card here, for example, the Black Hand. The 2 cards you have used to place these influence cubes are being discarded, so they will get to your discard pile, and that leaves you with 3 cards on your hand for this turn. You are still allowed to take a second action, and in this case it could be very good to buy some more influence cubes. And to buy influence cubes, you can now play these coin symbols here, for example, and for each 2 coin symbols you are allowed to buy 1 additional influence cube, and this comes from the common reserve in this case. So we are now have played 2 coins, so we are allowed to buy 1 influence cube. So again, we are up at 4 influence cube in our available stock. Of course, this card to buy this influence cube will be also discarded, and it's also very important to mention that you cannot deliberately overpay anything. Though I could not just, let's say, place this card here as well because it doesn't bring me anything. This is not allowed. You can only play these cards if you get really any use out of it. There is one little exception to the rules. So for example, if you would place a symbol with 2 of these influence cubes here and you would only have 1 influence cube, then you would be okay to play this card anyway. Now blue has 2 cards on his hand, and the last thing he would do, he would redraw 3 additional cards from the draw deck, and then it would go to the next player. A new round would start, and it's now the blue player's turn. Now he could claim an actual card. And this is also pretty important to mention. Claiming a card is the first thing that you have to do when it is your turn. So you place any new influence cubes, you cannot move any agent to the space where you need them, or you are not even allowed to play a free action. So if you want to claim a card, this has to be the very first thing you do during your turn. And then you would just calculate the majority for this card. So in this case, this is a city, but also the city is a card, basically a card in the city deck down there. And then you would just see who has the most influence cubes or has the most influence in a city. In this case, for Madrid, it's pretty easy. Only the blue player is here. So blue player would now be able to gain the card for Madrid. It's also important that, for example, an agent of you would give you 1 additional influence. So whenever an agent is present in the city, you want to claim a card, so like here in this example for Madrid, then you would have now 4 influence cubes in Madrid, and the agent is also the tiebreaker in respect to a tie. It also has to be mentioned that you would have at least 1 influence cube in order to really claim an actual card. So just having an agent in Madrid here would not allow you to claim Madrid city card. Let's give you some examples. In this case, this is clearly a tie. Blue has 3 influence cubes, red has 3 influence cubes, so no one would be allowed to claim the city card of Madrid. In this case, you would also have theoretically a tie. So you have 3 influence cubes or influence from the blue player, and you have 3 influence from the red player. But as blue has an agent present, and this can be any agent he controls, in this case, this agent is now the tiebreaker. So again, blue would be allowed to claim his city card for Madrid. So let's do that. The city deck is never being shuffled, as you have to find your card basically directly from this deck of cards. So in this case, this would be Madrid. So blue would now take the city card of Madrid. He would place it on top of his discard pile. He would send the 2 influence cube that he spent in order to gain this Madrid card into Limbo area. He would send these 3 cubes back to the active pool of the red player, so he cannot directly use it during his next turn. The agent can stay where he is. Blue will now place his control marker in the city of Madrid, and this control marker shows you gain 3 victory points, and this is something you score immediately. So blue would score 1, 2, 3 victory points. This also means that blue is now known to the authorities, and that's also a very special rule to this game. So for example, you can never be target of an assassination as long as you're not known to the authorities, and you always are known to the authorities as soon as you would earn your first victory points. But also if you take control of a card that could provide you some victory points by the end of the game, like this agent William Morris here, for example. So you don't have to actually score those victory points. The pure possibility to have some victory points is already sufficient in order to make you known to the authorities. So claiming this card for Madrid was the first action of the blue player. Now let's see how we can regain the influence cubes from Limbo. And right now there are only these 2 cubes in Limbo. In a really 5-player game, this really was a very well colored space here, so each player had at least 3-4 cubes in there. But for this example here, let's just consider only these 2 cubes are in Limbo. So there's one easy way to regain those, and this is again by playing the appropriate influence cubes cards. So in this case we would play these 2 cards, so this means these are now 2 influence cubes. This means you can retrieve those from Limbo. and put them back into your available stock. It also has to be noted, you don't have to retrieve them from Limbo. You could also retrieve them, for example, from any card on the game board. This could be from normal game card box or from permanent effect card. For example, in this case, you see, oh, I don't have a chance to claim Inspector Lestrade because I have too few of these influence cubes I cannot place anymore, so I could also retrieve them from Inspector Lestrade in this case. Unlike placing influence cube, you could retrieve them from the whole game board, so you don't have to retrieve them from one single location. So for example, I could retrieve one influence cube from this Holy Brotherhood here and one influence cube from Inspector Lestrade. Whenever you claim a card or a game card that represents an agent, for example the red player here for Vera Figner. In this case, these cubes also go to Limbo. All other players' cubes that are more or less in the minority would be given back to the player, to the available stock. The next thing that would happen is that you would place one of your control discs on the agent so that everyone is aware Vera Figner now belongs to the red player in this case, and the red player would take this card also to his discard pile, so he cannot directly use it. Then if you claim a card from a normal game card box, then you would reveal the next card on top of that. Again, this agent would move into the corresponding city box here, like Zurich for example, and during one of the next turns anyone could bid for this Vladimir Burtsev here. Let's show you some of the other actions you are allowed to take. For example, you could also move your agent from one adjacent city to the next. And you do that by just paying the cost that are printing on the game board. So for example, between Madrid and London, the movement would cost you 2 gold coins, and also you have to always take the shortest path to any city, so you cannot also deliberately overpay your movement. So in this case I would have to discard 2 coins like these 2 here, and then I would move my agent Thursday up to London. The next possible action would be to move the markers. So for example, if you would have the Berlin card on your hand, then you could play this card in order to use these symbols here. Then you have to choose which colored arrow you're about to move. So the Berlin card allows you to move the war track 2 spaces up, or the revolutionary track 2 spaces down. So for example, if this player playing this card would be the loyalist player, then he would be keen to move the war track up 2 spaces. So he would play this card now, and this would mean that he would move the war track 2 spaces up. This could be now a slight indication for all the other players that this player could be a loyalist. And that's because the war track for once can end the game, but this is also the truth for the revolution track. But only loyalist player would gain the victory points that this war track has actually reached. So whenever this would move here, then each loyalist player would gain 2 victory points by the end of the game. Here it would be 4, and so on. As an action, you could also discard cards from your hand, and this can be any number of cards from your hand. But it has to be mentioned that you are not allowed to redraw cards immediately. Only at the very end of your turn, then you are allowed to draw back up to your full hands of 5 cards. So this could really be a good choice to go for a second action. Further, as an action, you could reveal your secret identity, but only if this would allow you to actually end the game. So for example, this would be the current victory point track, so blue would be only 2 points away from actually ending the game, and there is one condition in the game that bring him this 2 additional victory points, like the revolution track or the war track or any agent that would bring him some victory points. Then in this case he could reveal his secret identity, then he would score the points and the game would immediately end. And last but not least, one of the most powerful actions in this game are the card actions. So for example, Vera Figner here would allow you to assassinate a royalty. And I think this is really something I have to explain in more detail. For example, Vera Figner or the agent would be here in Zurich at this point in time. And she is a restorationist player, and she wants to assassinate the royal person here. So Momo, the thousand-faced moon. So this is not something she wants to destroy. And again, we want to have a study in emerald here. So we want to see some green blood. He would now play as his action, first or second action, that really doesn't matter. He would play his agent card and would go for the actual action, which says assassinate royalty. Next thing is that she has to see how strong this royal person currently is. And the royal person here shows 5 bomb symbols. So she would need now in total 5 bomb symbols. Luckily, she already has 2 agents in Zurich, and both agents bring her currently 1 bomb symbol each. So she already has 2 bomb symbols. Now she has to play at least 3 additional bomb symbols. And of course, this can be played from her hand. So let's see what she currently has. Once she will play this card here. It says 1 use action, but again, we only play this card for the actual resources. So this will bring her now to 4 bomb symbols. Then luckily she has another card on her hand, and this will bring her another bomb symbol. So in total, she now reached 5 of these bomb symbols here. Theoretically, this guy is already dead. Now, the very cool part starts in this game, and this is the actual double agent. Now, all the other players could check their pool of double agents. And if everyone now could reveal or wanted to reveal the double agent of Vera Figner, then he could play it now. And then he say, no, hold on a second. Your Vera Figner is a double agent. And so this assassination is thwarted, basically. So this doesn't happen. So for example, the blue player would play this Vera Figner token. Now there are 2 things that are now going to happen. For once, the attempt is botched basically, so all the cards will be discarded normally. And so this would be remove the control disk. Blue would place his control disk on Vera Figner. Then the red player has to give this Vera Figner card to the blue player, who would put it on his discard pile. And from now on, the blue player would control Vera Figner. Very nasty. If no one would claim this double agent or would have the appropriate double agent, or no one wants to play it at this point in time, in this case the assassination was successful. So the red player would place his control disk on the Momo, the thousand-faced moon. Red player would gain also 2 victory points for this assassination, 1 and 2. And this also means that this royal person is now really dead. So no one else can assassinate him or hide him or whatever. He's a goner. You can also reveal your double agent token as part of your action. So for example, if you want, before an actual assassination takes place, you want to take control of Vera Figner, then the blue player could say, hey, as my first action or as my second action, I reveal Vera Figner here. So the same would happen now. We would exchange the control disk, and the card for Vera Figner will be given to the blue player. A loyal character maybe wouldn't want to assassinate the royal person. He could hide the royal person. And therefore there are these hide royalty cards in play, and these are always 1 use actions. There are 3 of them in the game. I think I explained those, and this works exactly like the assassination, but instead of just killing him, you will hide him. So you still have to meet the bomb symbol. Someone could object by playing a double agent token or anything else, but in this case, for example, no one would object, so you would place a save marker on top of this royal person, and then your control disk. You would still score 2 points, but by the end of the game, everyone knows that you hit this royal person instead of killing him. This can be important, for example, if you hit this royal person and you would be a restorationist, then you would not score any points for that. So in this case, by the end of the game, you would have to reduce your victory points, but to be honest, that's something that does not happen very often. After a successful hiding action or assassination, the player would now draw a madness counter. So, and then he would flip this around, and in this case, this shows the mad symbol. If you use, in this case, Vera Figner in order to attempt this assassination, she would be completely removed from the game because she went mad and will no longer be available to the player. Still, the assassination is successful, but you just lost yourself an agent. So she will be removed from the game. You would have to discard the game card accordingly, and as well, the player would keep this mad symbol. If your main agent would be the assassin and you would draw yourself a mad counter, then in this case your main agent would not immediately die, but still you would keep the mad token. Whenever you draw your third mad counter, you have to immediately reveal your secret identity. If you are a restorationist player, then this would mean your main agent would just have died and then the game immediately ends. Still, you can win the game. Instead of hiding or assassinating a royal person, you could also try to assassinate another agent. Of course, you still have to have the appropriate agent or hired assassin card in your hand, which will be a one-use action, and this allows you to assassinate royalty or another agent. So for example, Red, the agent Monday, wanted to kill Vera Fiegner, so the blue double agent, so she's a traitor, she deserves to die. So for example, Red would now say, I want to kill Vera Fiegner here. Now, more or less the same rules apply, or like assassinating a royal person. But for now, the bomb symbol of the city will be the defense value. So in this case for Zurich, this is 4 bomb symbols. Agent Monday brings 1 bomb symbol with him already, so he needs 3 additional ones. He played this card, but you are not allowed to use the bomb symbol of the card which you initiated the action with. Remember, you have to choose if you want to use the resources or if you want to use the actual card text here. So in this case, Vera would need to reveal at least 3 additional bomb symbols from a hand, and in this case, Vera Fiegner would be dead. But note, this is only allowed if the target agent or the target player is already known to the authorities. And you're only allowed to target another player's main agent when this is the last agent from this player on the board. So in this case, Red could never target the main agent of the blue player. He had to first kill Vera Fiegner, and then maybe during a next turn he could go for Agent Thursday. Of course, the other agent does not have to be on the same city. So as long as blue has anywhere on the game board another agent, his main agent could never be a target of assassination. There are so many different bits and pieces to this game. I cannot show you everything. So I already showed you the zombies here, which brings a nice little twist to the game, especially for the loyalist player. Also, the agents are always double-sided. So on the backside you find the same agent being a vampire with some very special rules to that. So for example, you can never assassinate an agent. Also, agent would be scoring some victory points for the loyalty by the end of the game. There is Cthulhu, which you can destroy a city. Bismarck is there, which will protect the city, and what have not. One last thing I have to mention though is how can you actually win this game? Of course, it's most important to mention that there is a victory point track, and of course the player with the most victory points wins the game. But there's also a special twist to this. In a 2-player game, that's pretty clear. The player with the most victory points just wins the game. The thing gets really interesting when playing this with 3 to 5 players, of course. And that's why I will bring a 3rd player to this game. So let's just assume everyone has revealed his secret identity, everyone scored his points from everything that's available, like the war track and the agents and so on. And now you would decide upon which side will be eliminated for the game. And you will always eliminate the side from the player that's on the last position. So let's just assume green and blue would both be a loyalist player. In this case, the green player and the blue player would be eliminated from the game, so there's only one player left. In this case, red would win the game. Pretty cool mechanism, eh? So I think I will end it here for my explanation here. That's really a tough game, and it's really tough to explain, especially when you do that in a foreign language. So I really apologize for any little grammar issues or some of the arms and ums and so on. But it was really tough for me to explain this game, tough to learn this game, but it's really an enjoyable game. I really enjoy it a lot. The theme is awesome, the mechanics are awesome, the way how you achieve this card to build your deck is awesome. So you have different possibilities abilities to gain these cards, so through city cards, through permanent effects, or for the normal game cards. There are these zombies, the vampire, you have these double agents, so some traitor mechanism in place. You don't really know on which side you are fighting and so on, so this really brings a lot this game, but it also requires you to play it quite often in order to get behind all the concept and ideas, in order to learn how the cards actually play for you. There's also one very unknown to this game, and this is which cards are actually in play, which cards are not. This is also pretty important in respect to your strategy, but you only know that by the end of the game, when you found out which cards were not in the game that would actually help you. I think, or I hope you enjoyed it, hope you learned some of the game mechanics of this game. Again, I cannot explain you each of the cards at this point in time. You really have to go in there. There are some very cool guidelines in this game, quick reference cards, and some of the most complex cards are well described in this box. And still, I hope that this explanation video showed you how the game actually works. I hope to see you soon in one of my next videos. Until then, bye bye.